Hey there, Kris. Welcome back to the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. We had you here with us. Oh, it's been a couple of years. Back on, I think, episode 68, we talked about gradual release responsibility. And we are super glad to have you back. We're going to talk all things mathematics. So how you been?
Everything's going good. I remember the last time we were on here, we talked about you messed up the title. The
Yeah,
last time it was gradual release of responsibility
that's
sucks.
it. That's the
I just want
title.
to say the sucks part because that kind of went viral a little bit. Like folks were like, what's going on? But all things are going well, still pushing this whole piece of what's happening in math ed. It's like, I'm be honest, I think it's stale. Like we keep regurgitating the same stuff over and over and keep wondering why we get the same results. So for me, I'm doing good, but the field, yeah, we struggling.
Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, you just nailed it. And that's exactly it. It's funny because it seems like so many of the ideas that John and I reiterate on the show and guests come on the show every single week, we're talking, like you said, about the same things. We just haven't actually done the things. And, one of the biggest things on our mind has been how do we help, especially math leaders, in actually walking that walk, because I think that's some of the most impactful work that we can do. And I'd be curious, before we dig right in here today, like, you're working with districts all over the place. You're working with Open Up resources. You're doing all kinds of great things out there. What do you see or feel is like maybe our biggest hurdle or obstacle in the field? Like if we're regurgitating all this stuff, the definition of insanity is what I heard you just say, right? Is like we're just doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And here we are. What's the biggest hurdle in your mind? And how do we as a community, the Math Moment Maker community, how do we do something about it?
So I think we got two camps right now in the math ed field. We got one camp, they just want to be honest. Some folks just want to be seen, get some followers on social media and be the cool person and just do all the things. It is what it is, rocky world.
Yep.
So they never were in it to actually facilitate change. But then we have folks that really want to do the work, really want to do the things.
Mm-hmm.
We're too busy. I'm putting myself in there. I'm gonna call myself out. We're too busy trying to do the big thing as opposed to focus on what are the little things that we can be doing to slowly make progress and facilitate change. We're so worried about what's the big thing I can do that's going to knock it out the park. That ain't happening, y'all.
Yeah.
It's the little things you keep chipping away at it and keep getting better and better and better and better and better and better every single day. That's how we're going to think about when you first learn to count, do you start to learn to count 1 through 10,000? No, you started to learn what? 0 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to 10. Then you get to 20. Then you get to 100. It's the same thing. Like if it's a progression of learning to count, it's a progression of learning to change the system. But are we willing in this field of education, especially as math education, to do those little things that eventually going to have a bigger impact?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like you said, say like if we have effective mathematics, professional development, folks sharing their ideas, their thoughts, their webinars, their courses, the work that they're doing, the partnering with the big districts, and they're trying to share big ideas. I think a lot of folks are we're hearing, and what we're seeing is all pedagogy. It's like, boom, we got to change pedagogy. We got to change like effective instruction. What are you seeing as the little things? Like if we're saying these are the big things, we're all trying to focus on big things. What would you say are some of the key moves, like these little things that we need as teachers to put in the reps? Like keep hammering at these things over time. We'll know that will affect change with our students. So what would you say are some of your top little things that teachers can do to make those change, and then also effective professional development providers to help teachers make those changes?
I think we got to, again, think small, but think simple and think meaningful. You're going to hear me say on this podcast, children a lot. I try not to use the word students because it's so formal and it's an ID number, but they're children. They're babies. They're still learning and growing no matter what age they're at. But one of the things we could do in your environments, how often do children have the opportunity to talk about math? They talk on the playground, they talk before school, they talk at lunch, and they get a math class. They got to hear you lecture for 60 minutes, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
What is a little thing to do? Allowing them to talk and showcase their thinking. Creating that space for that to occur, that's a little thing that we can do, but how often do we do it? The second thing, how often do we this is what I'm like, I'm going hard in the paint. I don't know when you're watching this episode. Right now, we're in 2023, but I'm going hard in the paint to the end of the career. So if you're watching this in 2023, You're seeing it in real time. If you're watching later in life, you know I've been doing this. When are we going to make sure every child is seen and valued in their mathematics education experience? Too often, if you're not, let me just be honest, fellas, y'all put me back. If you're not a white identifying child, you don't see yourself in the math education experience.
Mm-hmm.
If you're anything else, you may or may not see yourself. How often are we making sure every child seen, valued within that experience? How are we showing women that can be mathematics educators?
Mm-hmm.
How are we showing someone that can be a melanated identifier as a mathematics educator? We are so centered on this crap of, we got to get the right answer. We got to get ready for the standardized test.
Right.
We got to do this. We're missing the beauty of what mathematics was created to be. And that is a problem solving piece, everyone being involved in it. But oftentimes in mathematics, we're so focused on, I got to tell you all these things because of the test. And we keep saying there's an achievement gap. There's really an opportunity gap because you're not creating the things for every child to be seen and valued. So let's rewind that. 2 things real quick that you can do. Number 1, are you letting every child speak during the mathematics lesson? Every single child. Every single child has a contribution. Are they getting that opportunity? The second thing, are they seen in the mathematics experience? There's so many opportunities in mathematics to let someone be seen, be valued, be heard. Are you providing that? And you can't blame the curriculum for that. You can't blame the standards for that. You can't blame all the things. We can only blame ourselves. Are we doing that? And then as professional learning providers, hey, y'all, this clip gonna go viral. A lot of y'all PL providers just taking the same books and highlighting a couple of notes and regurgitating some PL and doing a lot of things. Okay, respect. But are you changing the narrative? Or are you just trying to do a lot of things? What are you doing in this PL work? What are you doing in this work to be innovative and practical and actually making sure folks do the work? A lot of times we as PL providers, let me be honest, we come in, we do the thing with the rock star and we leave and never check on these folks.
Yeah.
Totally. and then we like, so perfect example, right before this podcast, I'm gonna be honest, a district called me, we want to do some work together. Oftentimes what we do, hey, district's telling you we need 3 things done. PL provides like, oh, I'm gonna do those things, but let me show you 4 and 5 because that's my jam, so I can feel good about myself.
Right.
So you go in, you really don't even do 1, 2, and 3. You do 4 and 5. You feel good. The district is like, we don't even talk about half that stuff, and that's again because it's easy to do it that way as opposed to how we authentically develop relationships with these districts, authentically over time working with, hey, what are you doing in the district? Let me help that part and then enhance it collaboratively and not just, hey, Kris, come do your thing. Hey, we're going to do our thing. No, the goal is to help teachers. The goal is to help children. We got to work together. All right, I said a lot. Let me pause. I'm hyped up.
I love it. I love it. You're bringing it.
I miss being on this podcast.
You're bringing it on a Monday morning, which is awesome. You got tons and tons of energy, which is amazing. And, you know, I want to roll back because you said so many key pieces there, which is so important. I think when you were talking about the PL leaders or the PL deliverers, I think one of the things that we see often missing is not only are they coming in and I'll say Kris, you're just like us. You go in and you offer professional learning, but whether they realize it or not, oftentimes we come in and then we do things in the way that we're telling them not to do as students, which is telling them things, right? And we might do it in an engaging way. It might be an interesting story of whatever the presentation may be. But something that, we really try to do anytime we're working in a district, we ask that we have the opportunity to engage in the math, because until you actually see the mathematics unfolding in the ways that we're describing, right? And unless we get people to talk about the math and give them the opportunity, these are teachers getting the opportunity to do that talking. It's hard for them to go back into their classroom and get their kids to talk because they're like, I don't know what that's supposed to look like and sound like, right? That's a big risk for some teachers who may not have done that. If we're talking about trying to make sure that every student sees themselves valued as a valued member of the mathematics community, we need to let them as educators see that as well. And that's something that, I think we miss the mark on so many times unless we're very explicit about actually making sure that there's math at the center of everything we do with our educators. It's way too abstract. Just like math class is way too abstract for the students that we're trying to teach when we're just telling them. It's too abstract for teachers to kind of see what this math environment could look like by just describing it. We need to create it with our educators so that the educators know what that looks like and feels like, most importantly, right? Like you have to feel it so that you go, oh my gosh, I need every single student in my class to feel the same way I felt through that mathematical experience. So I'm wondering, like, for you, what does that look like and sound like when you want to go into a district and let's say, you know, they say something like, hey, listen, we just want you to do like a 60-minute talk about, you know, all the good things. You know, what does that look like and sound like for you? Like, is it like one of those where you're like, shoot, I just got to do it that way? Or how do you find ways to kind of allow the participants to feel what it is that you want students to be feeling in your math class?
So first, we got to redefine what is math. So when I'm working with districts, I'm always questioning this idea of math. Is it just a textbook, bunch of one of these textbooks? Is it just a textbook with a bunch of math problems in it? Or it's math all around us? And how we create an environment where mathematics can make sense of the problems of the world, where in general, let's not make it practical. I'm going like theoretical, make sense of the world. It's kind of convoluted. But how are we making it practical? Like everyday uses of math. Right now, we're doing this virtual, but when we're face to face, folks drove to a session. If you drove to a session or took some mode of transportation, you utilized gas. That costs money. How can we just talk about the practical sense of how much did it cost for you to be here today? Then when you grab lunch, how much did that cost? Then making that connection to what how much do you make? So those are practical pieces that we often get hung up on. Let's talk about these fractions today and finding a common denominator. Good and dandy. That common denominator is not going to help you pay that light bill. That common denominator is not going to help you understand and make some calculations as you're moving through the day. So for me, it's how do we make practical sense of mathematics? And I call it, you know, applicable mathematics, not only for the participants, but then helping them think, how am I translating that to the classroom?
Yeah.
We live in the day and the age. I'm not trying to give you ageism, but we grew up in this sense of you never have a calculator all the time.
Yeah.
You got to learn these formulas. You got to memorize it. Let's be real.
Yeah.
These children today going to always have that supercomputer in their pocket, that phone. They can Google. They can do a lot of different things. So we have to start to push. What are we doing to harness that? As opposed to, like, I'm be honest, I got young children in schools, and you can imagine what it's like me being a parent of children in schools and interacting with teachers. But I'm honest. I go into these conferences and I say, hey, they're never going to use this stuff. Let's be real. You're making them memorize and learn stuff they will never use. What are we doing to be innovative?
Yeah.
What are we doing to harness the power of technology? That's what we need to start thinking through in our workshops, and then helping teachers see that. And then I know everyone's going to talk about the standardized exam, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, if we want to go there, we can go there. But at the end of the day, is that standardized exam benefiting children? No one has asked me what I got on my 8th grade math test.
Yeah.
No one has asked me about my SAT, ACT scores. I'm just being honest.
No. And no one,
but they have asked me to do problems. All right.
Yeah.
Let me
I was just going to say, no one,
the assessment people will listen to y'all podcast, like, let's skip that part. I don't want to hear that guy.
No, it's like, I'm really glad you brought up like what is practical, but also what is being used by students in their real life. And it's something I think we're seeing in when we're doing our professional development sessions, as Kyle had mentioned, that we focus heavily on the mathematics, but I think the mathematics in their practical sense, but what we're trying to do is like uncover hidden truths for teachers, because you're saying like is no good for us to go in and kind of show, I'm going to show you how to do fractions. Like that doesn't make any sense. But what does make sense for us, and we're seeing the biggest hurdle right now in teachers changing their pedagogy, is them truly understanding the conceptual understanding of mathematics. So when we say, hey, we want to do fractions, what we want to do is like uncover actual strategies and models people in their real life will use when they don't, hey, they can have a calculator, but are they using models in effective, flexible strategies to achieve that? And when we uncover that with teachers and we, blow their minds with the models and strategies, they're like, I've never seen math done like that before. And we're like, actually, you probably have. It's probably the strategy you mentally do on your own anyway, but we don't teach it that way. We teach the algorithm and the memorization technique and not the actual understanding in the flexible model. When we start to show teachers that, that's where we see true change in pedagogy, because that's the biggest hurdle right now. I'm not sure what you're seeing as a big hurdle for teachers to change their instruction, is that when we're asking teachers to change their instruction and say, hey, I want more talking in my mathematics classes. I want my students to be talkers. I want that discourse. I want them to think. And I also want them to interact with each other. Teachers don't go down that pathway because they don't feel comfortable in unlocking the potential of like what math could be to these students, because they don't know it themselves. They're like, I don't have the confidence to like be flexible in the moment. And so that's the biggest hurdle we're seeing right now in change in pedagogy, is actually help, teachers like low confidence in real understanding of conceptual mathematics. I don't know, what are you seeing as a barrier right now in teachers changing pedagogy?
So I want to shift it from that piece to more so the biggest thing I've seen in doing this PL work, and I got to travel the country and doing it, is most folks have to see it to believe it. Because all of us have gone through an educational experience. All of us have quote unquote seen it done. But as we're talking about these new and innovative models, are we giving them opportunities to see it done so they can make sense of it? Oftentimes we do these abstract professional learning activities in, let's say, the cafeteria or the library. There are no children around. So it sounds good, it feels good, but I'm like every teacher I work with, show me in my classroom.
Sure.
So we need to take all of these things that we're saying that can be done into actual classrooms, and then collaboratively working with the teachers to show it can be done, and this is how we do it. Because at their heart, every teacher wants to do better. Every teacher wants the children to do better. But oftentimes we don't give them that chance to collaboratively work with us in this piece of collectively working to do better.
You just nailed it. I love that. The piece and the key is, until you actually experience it, until you see it, you don't know what you're signing up for, right? Like, it sounds great. I heard what John just said. That sounds great. I want to shift it, my thinking, and do what John said, or I want to do what Kris said. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to really experience this shift before we're able to take that first step, like the first real step, we'll say, right, in shifting that work and shifting our way through. And that's really interesting. I'm wondering, where your head is at when you're going in and you work with say a district, or you're working with a school. How, do you have any sort of go-to strategies? Like, we know there's so many math leaders that listen to this podcast. I would argue that the majority of listeners are in some sort of leadership role, be it at the grade level or maybe administration or coordinators, things of that nature. What's kind of like your go-to to kind of like invite educators to see and believe the mathematics as you're describing?
For me, it starts off relationship building. A lot of folks expect me to jump into the math. A lot of folks in my work expect me to jump into, let's talk about equity. A lot of folks expect me just to do all the things. But at the end of the day, I want to develop a relationship with you. Why? Because one, I care about you, care about who you are as a person. And then mutually, I hope you care about me. That's why you brought me in. As we develop a relationship, sometimes maybe into a friendship, then we could collaboratively work together to do better for this district, to do better for these children. I think oftentimes in this work, we miss that. We miss that because we as PL providers trying to get in and get out.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are bringing us in are, hey,
Fast
we just
and
need to get you in and out. Fast and furious. But at the end of the day, I want to run a marathon with folks that I work with. I don't want to run a sprint. If someone wants to run a sprint, I'm be honest, pick somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I want to run a marathon because if I believe in what I'm saying, I believe in what I think we should be doing. I want to be there with you as teachers improve, as children improve. I don't want to just tell you something and let's see if it happens. Let's work together. Let's be collaborative. And that way, if it doesn't work, I want you to call me out on it. Kris, this stuff didn't work. And we worked together for the past year. Respect. I was wrong. So I think that's something that's missing within this piece. We have to be willing to develop relationships. We got to be willing to work together collaboratively. If we're working together collaboratively, then we can jump into, let's talk about the mathematics. Let's talk about, as John mentioned earlier, let's dive into this conceptual knowledge, this conceptual understanding. Let's dive into this procedural fluency. Let's do all the things. But let's get to know each other and see how we can collaboratively work together in making stuff better.
Yeah.
And one more
Yeah.
thing. If we think about this collaboration piece, as we work in this PL piece, and PL providers, you know this. You travel, you see a lot of things. Education, we're doing so many things in silos. And with all this technology, how are we bringing people together? Like, you see this happening here, you see this happening here. While it may not benefit you to connect to people, it benefits the ecosystem. So let's stop thinking so small and like, how do we make these connections that work together?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that's so true, because what you just said is exactly how all professional learning providers are talking about how teachers can help their students, is to create that relational trust. And in that mentor relationship is because the student is not going to or a child is not going to open their minds to accepting new ideas, new strategies, talking to others, if they're not feeling seen in that classroom, but also have trust that the teacher is there for them. So we talk about that all the time as professional learning providers, but how many professional learning providers are doing that with the teachers that they're working with? And I think that's huge. And you hit the nail on the head about like how many people are coming into a district and doing the one and done and then moving on, right? It's like, I'm here, I'm doing my 4 and 5 and then I'm out, instead of like saying, no, like I'm here for the long term. And that's actually one of our models that we've changed in the last couple of years, 2 years, is that we hold back on, if you want us to come in and do a one-off, it's probably not for us. We're looking to partner with the district for the long game and come in and build that trust so that we can support sustainable, real change in your district and do all the little things with you to make this happen. And so that when we do leave, we might not partner for more than 3 years, but after that 3rd year, when we do leave, we've left a system in place that not only is trust is built on the foundation of the leadership, but also it's trickled down to the teachers. So that's something that we've been working on. I'm glad that it's in line with what you're saying, for sure. Kris, I want to shift just a little bit to be talking about, we have our virtual summit that we've been holding. This is going to be our 5th virtual summit coming up in November. You were with us a few times ago, and I want to kind of jump into some of the topics that we're going to talk about. We're really looking forward to your session that coming up. I think your session is going to be on Sunday, November 19th. So we're excited to share that. Give us some insight. Give us some backstage access here on what you're thinking of talking about, and let's dive in a little bit.
So there's no secret what I'm talking about. I'm bringing one of my colleagues for this one, surprise guest. I'm not even gonna say here who's coming with me, but we're gonna hit on the big 3. It's gonna be simple. 1, we're gonna focus on classroom equity in mathematics. So classroom mathematics equity, or mathematics classroom equity. Second thing we're gonna focus on is culture responsive education. What does it look like and feel like? Like, we got to be honest. We'll come back to the coach, but I'm gonna give you the big 3, then come back to it. Then the third piece is, what are we doing to create a child-centered environment? That's it. I'm keeping it simple.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna give you like, here 50 things to do.
Right.
Big 3: equity, culture responsive, child-centered. That's all that matters. And the reason we're focused on this equity piece is it's education's favorite buzzword, but it's something we really don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
You probably like, dang, he just said that. Yeah, I just said it. Sure. We don't. We're in 2023. We still don't have equity in classrooms, and equity at all the levels, from technology, from proficient teachers, from the right environments, from high quality curriculum materials, from every child being seen value. In 2023, all this technology, we still don't have equity. Second piece, this culture responsive piece. In 2023, there's still curriculums that refuse to be inclusive as it relates to race, ethnicity, as it relates to socioeconomic status, as it relates to disabilities, or as it relates to multilinguals. In 2023. So you're telling me in 2023, we still have curriculums that only center one child. Yeah. So what are we doing to be culture responsive to all the things? And every publisher out there, stop saying what you cannot do. You're multi-million-dollar companies. You can hire anybody that you want, and you refuse to do better. Why? Because it doesn't impact your bottom line. The districts keep buying these crappy materials from you. That's why you're not doing better. You don't want to do better. Clip that, post it. Yeah, I said it. I'm calling us out as an industry because we can do better. But at the end of the day, do we want to do better? Do we really care about every child? Do we really care about that bottom line every single month or every single day?
You know, you highlight something that I think is so true in education, not, you know, equity being like you're saying, like it's in the forefront right now. It is the thing on every district improvement plan, school improvement plan, everywhere. But like you're saying, just like all the other improvement plans that have existed decades ago, does it really matter? Because if it really matters, then we're going to actually do something about it. And we're actually going to make it a priority, not just add it to the list of the things that we're going to say we're doing, but then make excuses that there's all these other things going on getting in the way, right? And that's ultimately what ends up happening with all of these improvement plans. So I am super, super excited to be able to dive into those big three with you at the summit. I'm wondering, like, are there any like sneak peeks for us? You gave us a big one right there. Just this idea that it's a buzzword, equity is a buzzword, and that actually, if we truly cared about it, that we would actually be doing something or more about it. Any other little sneak peeks for those who are thinking about the sessions that they're going to be attending this coming November?
So at the end of the day, y'all, here's the biggest sneak peek, the biggest kept secret that you should know. Change starts with you. A lot of us, as I'm talking through these things, folks are listening to you, Kyle. Yes, the equity buzzword. Yeah, we have that plan. Or that's what about this? What about this? At the end of the day, when you close that classroom door, what are you doing to bring about equity? When we're doing professional learning, what are we doing to push the needle? When you're doing all the things in your leadership, what are you doing? I ain't trying to hear. I say I ain't. I'm in the South, y'all, so I apologize. I am not trying to hear that you cannot do certain things. What I want to know is what can you do, and are you doing the things that you can do? Period.
Yeah, and I think if you're waiting for the administration, the senior administration, the district to tell you what it's going to look like, what it's going to do, then you're going to be waiting forever, or you're going about it wrong. It does have to come from you. It has to come from you going, what am I going to do to make this difference? Because it's going to come from the bottom up. If it's really going to make this change for sure. Kris, I'm wondering, that sounds like a big takeaway for our listeners, but if you had to leave one more idea for our listeners right now, what would it be, kind of to leave the episode with?
I'm gonna say this to the listeners. You all have enjoyed Kyle, John, and Kris. We appreciate you tuning in. You're not going to get this time back in your life. And I say this in every talk that I have. So however long this episode ends up being, you're not getting this time back. But what history is going to record, all of you listen to this episode, you heard our voices. But the question is going to be what you're going to do with what you're hearing. A lot of us, we keep waiting for this mythical person to do all the things when you were put here on this planet for a limited amount of time to do the things. The question is, are you willing to do the things that you need to do to facilitate change in mathematics education, to facilitate change in your environment? Or are you just going to keep waiting for this mythical person? Or are you going to keep waiting for all these other things to happen, as opposed to looking in the mirror and saying, you know what? I've been getting a shot at this thing called life. This is a career path I've chosen. I'm going to do the things that I got to do to make it better. Are you willing to do that? If you are, get off your butt and start doing it. Like, there's nothing magical that's going to happen in some moment in time. But what's going to happen, or what needs to happen, is you doing what you need to do to make these things happen.
I love it. I love it. And, and if we all can take even that little thing and we all can do something, and that was kind of my big takeaway here, is that we can all do something to do it a little bit better. And if everybody's doing something to do it better, we're all going to learn from each other. You talked about collaboration, working together. It's like, hey, if I could bring this piece, to the bigger puzzle, and John brings that piece, and Kris and the next person, we're all bringing these pieces together. It's going to fit nicely, and we're going to have a much better situation for those students, not just this year, next year, but hopefully decades down the road. And hopefully, when we chat with you on the next time we're on the episode, we're not saying, hey, we're still regurgitating the same things over and over again. It sounds like what you're saying is let's quit waiting and let's just take some action. So Kris, we want to thank you so much for being on the show here today, coming back on the show, and joining us again this November 17th, 18th, 19th, 2023 in our 5th annual free virtual summit. Kris is going to be one of our featured speakers. And as always, Kris, always learning a ton from you and with you. And we so appreciate the work you do and for taking some time to chat with the Math Moment Makers here today.
Yeah, thank you all for the opportunity to continue doing the amazing work that you all are doing. A real quick plug, follow me on all social media platforms at DRK Childs. Take me on the website, www.kristopherchilds.com, Kristopher with a K.
And don't forget, hey, Kris has his own podcast. You co-host with a few others. Kris, tell them about your podcast.
So we switched it. We pivoted. We got a new show.
Ooh.
Inspiring Voices from the Classroom. So if you're on YouTube, type in Inspiring Voices from the Classroom. It's on my channel. I go around the country interviewing some amazing mathematics educators live and in person. We just released season 2, brand new episodes out, Inspiring Voices from the Classroom. Yes, it's on the podcast platforms, but it's a show. Check it out on YouTube. I promise it's the most amazing show to hit math education. Y'all need to check it out.
Awesome stuff. We will include all of that in our show notes page. Kris, again, thanks so much and look forward to chatting with you in November.
Thank you. Y'all take care.